Hello again and welcome to another Warhammer 40k Mordian Glory video. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about everyone's favourite political officers, the Commissars. Commissars are one of the most iconic and ironically beloved units in the Imperial Guard collection. There is nothing that symbolises the Imperium and the Imperial Guard more than these black-clad officers striding heroically forward, inspiring the men and taking the fight to the heart of the enemy, all the while keeping a beady eye out for any heresy or cowardice. Nearly every Imperial Guard player at some point is going to pick up one or more Commissars and add it to their forces purely based on rule of cool alone. However, it's not just the cool factor that makes these guys pretty good on the tabletop. They are the easiest way for you to gain access to Prefectus orders within your army. You see, in the new Guard Codex, Commissars have access to their own special order tree, just like your officers and your tank commanders. But the Prefectus orders tend to be a little bit more niche and a bit specialist, but when they come up, they can potentially be game winning, which is why so many Guard commanders are eager to include Prefectus orders in their army in one form or another, including yours truly. For example, if you've got an enemy assault army barreling down on you, crashing into your lines, tying up loads of your units, you definitely want access to Prefectus orders because they can allow you to fall back and still shoot or charge, which means that you can execute a rolling retreat while still pouring fire into the enemy, slowly whittling them down over the course of the first few turns of the game. Once those units have been dealt with, you can then surge out and secure victory in the later turns. But without those Prefectus orders, your firepower would be greatly diminished and you wouldn't really be able to pull off that fighting withdrawal effectively. The problem is that whilst Commissars might be the easiest, most straightforward way of getting these viable Prefectus orders into your list, they're actually one of the least helpful ways because Commissars do not have access to Voxcasters, which means that they can only ever order units that are within 6 inches of them. So that means if your opponent is assaulting your left flank and tying your infantry up over there, but your Commissar happens to be over on your right flank, then you're in a bit of a tricky situation. You could get around this by taking multiple Commissars and sprinkling them out throughout your lines, but that's going to start getting expensive quickly. These guys come in at 40 points a pop, cheap individually, but expensive when bought in bulk. On top of this, most Guard commanders are looking to include Lord Solar Leontus into their force because he's such a good force multiplier. Not only is he bringing all sorts of reroll auras and he can supercharge one unit a turn, but he also can do 3 orders a turn, including being able to do Prefectus orders. And unlike a Commissar, he's got a 12-inch movement. So if you can see that the enemy assault is going to be coming on your left flank and Lord Solar Leontus happens to be on your right flank, with a cheeky move in advance, you can get him set up for your following command phase so we can start doing those fall back and shoot orders if he needs to. Now, all of this sounds like pretty bad news for our boys in the Black Greatcoats. But don't worry if you're a big Commissar fan, because they actually still have a really vital role that they can play on the battlefield. And it's one that I've started to explore more and more, and I found it pretty effective. You see, what I like to do with my Commissars is a little tactic that I call the pseudo senior officer. Now, what the hell is this thing? Well, it's an incredibly easy tactic. Any Guard player can implement it. All you need is a Commissar. There's no other combinations of units that you need to do. It's literally just a way of getting your Commissar to start acting like a senior officer. And it's plug and play as fuck, guys. Literally, you could put this into any kind of Guard army and you'll be able to find a use for it. All you need is 40 points for the Commissar and 1 to 2 command points. That's it. And what it allows you to do is get a 3rd senior officer. Well, sort of, okay? And you'll see why I say sort of in a moment. But this tactic, whilst it can be used in any Guard army, is perfect for your Mech Guard armies and also if you're including a mortar pit in your force. So how this works is you're going to take your Commissar and you're going to keep him as cheap as possible. Don't bother slapping plasma pistols or power swords on him. The big advantage of this tactic is that it's pretty cheap. Any points you spend on it that you don't need to, you're making it less efficient. You're then going to spend a command point on the Commissar, and you're going to use the stratagem Officer Cadre. This allows you to generate a warlord trait for the Commissar, even though he isn't your warlord. And the trait you're going to pick is Superior Tactical Training. This trait means that the Commissar knows a type of order he didn't already know. So he comes with Perfector's orders, and you can use Superior Tactical Training to allow the Commissar to do mechanized orders or regimental orders in addition to his Commissar ones. Now, there are three main ways that we can take advantage of this order flexibility and this pseudo senior officer that we have made. The first way is we can now use the Commissar to babysit our mortar pit rather than having to use a Marshal or a Caden Castellan to do that job. You see, a mortar pit is where you take 3 heavy weapon squads and you give every single one of those teams a mortar. This gives you 9 mortars, which is great for just raining down shells on your opponent. But the problem with indirect fire weapons is, of course, they suffer from -1 to hit. The enemy gets +1 armor save if you are shooting them indirectly. It's the whole indirect fire nerf that GW has introduced in 9th edition. But if you have a Commissar that knows regimental orders and he can issue those squads around him the take aim order, suddenly, even though they're firing directly, they get +1 to hit again, so they're back hitting on their 4s, and even though the enemy's got +1 to the armor save, doesn't matter, you've now got an extra AP. The reason you'd want to use the Commissar in this role is, whilst it can be quite nice to have reroll 1s to hit on the mortars, there are other areas that need reroll 1s more. For example, if you're running a Scion Death Ball, you're going to have a lot of plasma, and that Death Ball really could do with a senior officer babysitting it. Likewise, in the same list, there's a high probability you're going to be running Caden Shock Troops with double plasma. Again, those plasma guns really need that reroll 1s more than the heavy weapon squads. So by using the Commissar to babysit the mortar pit, you're freeing up those 2 reroll 1 auras so they can affect units that need them more, whilst at the same time you've still got an officer nearby the heavy weapon squads, so you can still get loads and loads of points on your inflexible command secondary. Now, some of you might say, but Mordian Glory, surely you could take like a command squad and have that babysitting the mortars, give them the +1 to hit, +1 AP via take aim, and they've got a Voxcaster, so they're still able to do some good stuff with inflexible command. This is true. I'm not going to deny this whatsoever, but what I would argue is, once again, the main benefit of the command squad, one of the big things about it, is that not only does it give out reroll 1s to hit auras, but also it's going to be a great place for you to put the finial of the Nemradesh first, also known as the Big Bullshit Banner, also known as the best and most broken relic in Warhammer 40k. Now, if you've got a command squad sitting back babysitting a bunch of mortars, then you're not really getting the most out of that Big Bullshit Banner, which you should have taken in your army. Also, it's very unlikely that you've taken 2 command squads in your army, because you're probably taking 2 senior officers and then a command squad and then a tank commander in some sort of hybrid guard force. All right. So really, the Commissar is again freeing up that more valuable officer unit to go and support the Scion Death Ball, to go and give out those more important auras and relic abilities to those units which are really going to benefit from it way more than a bunch of supplementary supporting, still valuable mortars. So that covers one way of using this pseudo officer, but the second way of using this pseudo senior officer is in a Mech Guard army. This is where you take lots of chimeras and fill them with infantry, be that Cadians or Kazakin or whatever. The principal fighting force of your army is going to be mechanized, mounted up infantry who are taking the fight to the heart of the enemy. The reason why a lot of Guard players like this force is it lets you get lots of tanks in your army, but also provides lots of benefits. You're getting extra durability for your relatively squishy infantry. Now they're hiding inside a metal box, and you also get extra guns for them from the support supporting firepower of the Chimera, and also you're getting lots more movement. Now that move has really been reduced down to sort of 12 inches of movement, having a transport makes a lot of sense. It allows you to move, and also if you're using the mechanized infantry doctrine, you can start getting out. It's just a great way of being able to be mobile and add lots of firepower into your force. The problem is that Mech Guard is primarily an infantry fighting force, but it doesn't have the ability to bring all of the officers along that it needs. So you can take 2 squads of infantry, put them in 2 chimeras, and you can take a senior officer to support that push. Those guys can move up, they can get out of their chimeras, the officer can disembark, and he can order both of those units. Remember, when you disembark from a chimera, you don't get the splashing order effect from regimental tactics. You can only do one order to one squad and then another order to another squad, and then your senior officer is done. So you can do this twice, because you can take 2 senior officers and you can take 4 infantry squads and 4 chimeras, and these officers have no problem riding along with their men because chimeras can transport 12 people. After this point is when you start coming into those problems, because at this point you have to start turning to command squads to get infantry orders for your mechanized groups. And command squads are too big to fit inside a chimera with an infantry squad as well, because there's 5 men in the command squad, there's 5 men in the infantry squad, and the transport capacity of a chimera is 12. So they just can't go in there together. That means if you want your command squad to be able to keep up with your mechanized pushes, they're going to need their own chimera. And also for like fluff reasons and law reasons, you know, in a mechanized army, every unit gets a chimera, right? So the issue you've then got is you're spending 85 points to take chimera for a command squad, which is costing you 75 points, which is way more than a Castellan or a Death Corps Marshal. And then you can only support 1 infantry squad with that officer, because he only does 1 order. So it's like, okay, so I'm taking an extra chimera for a more expensive squad, and he can only support 1 more of my armor fist squads. The maths here just isn't adding up to efficiency. This is where our pseudo senior officer Commissar steps in and saves the day, because you can take the Commissar with superior tactical training, and then you spend another command point on him, and you give him the tactical auto reliquary of Tiberius. This allows him to do an extra order, and suddenly you have a Commissar that can do 2 orders a turn, and he can know regimental orders as well. Suddenly you've got that 3rd senior officer that you need, a unit that can ride in a chimera with a 10-man squad, a unit that can do 2 orders and therefore can support 2 infantry units when they jump out of their chimeras. You basically have the ability to field a 3rd of these small mechanized infantry platoons, and overall what this allows you to field is 6 chimeras with 6 infantry squads supported by 3 officers. All of your infantry can receive orders when they jump out of their chimeras, and it's just much more points efficient and effective. And honestly, as someone who has a Steel Legion army and who runs a lot of mechanized guard, you don't tend to need more than 6 chimera squads in a balanced mechanized force, because once you've got your 6 chimera squads, you're then looking at taking Leman Russes or maybe some artillery or some sentinels, and so it really does provide you with that very efficient core to your mechanized assault force. So that covers how you can use Commissars to get more regimental orders into your army and to how effectively use them. But what about mechanized orders? Because superior tactical training can allow your Commissar to know mech orders, and you can still use that tactical auto reliquary to get him to know 2 mechanized orders if you really want to. This can be an incredibly helpful Commissar to have in your army, because think about the Arcs of Omen detachment, guys. You can take 4 HQ slots. Most hybrid guard armies are going to be taking 2 proper senior officers, be they Cadian Castellans or Death Corps Marshals. Then they're going to want to take a command squad so they can take the big bullshit banner. And then they're going to want to source some mechanized orders. Now, normally that's going to be a tank commander. And in most hybrid armies, they're still going to want that tank commander, okay? But the issue is that typically you can only fit 1 tank commander in your force. And if he dies, you lose all sorts of mechanized orders, which can be a real ball ache, because you want to be able to give reroll 1s to hit out via gunner's kill on sight to your plasma executioner tanks. It's also annoying and tactically inflexible having all of your tanks crammed together so that they can receive the one mechanized order and have it splash around from the tank commander. You might want to split your Lean Russes into 2 wolf packs, one on the left flank, one on the right flank. But if you do that, one of those packs of Lean Russes is not going to have reroll 1s to hit, which means you've either got to take weapons which aren't as good as plasma executioners, and then you're reducing your combat effectiveness, or you've just got to accept the fact that those executioners are probably over the course of the game going to do damage to themselves. They'll probably bracket themselves at the worst possible moment. It's just not a good situation to be in, just relying upon a single tank commander. This is where the Commissar comes in and saves the day once again, because you can take a Commissar for 40 points. You don't even need to give him the tactical auto reliquary. Just keep him with 1 order and have him with superior tactical training, so he knows mechanized orders, and have him running alongside a squadron of Russes, handing out gunner's kill on sight. Suddenly, you've got tactical flexibility. You can split your forces down into 2 smaller tank groups. Suddenly, you're not having to worry about inflexible command because the Commissar has the officer keyword. So as long as those Russes stay within 12 inches of him, he's still helping you get those secondary points. And it's just a really effective way of getting more mechanized orders into your army. And it means if your tank commander dies because he can be targeted, he can't be lookout served because he's got more than 12 wounds, you've still got the Commissar who A, can't be lookout served because he's a smaller character, and B, if you do lose the main tank commander, you've got a backup source of mechanized orders and you can bring your Russes back together and you can still hand out those reroll 1s to hit, which is great. And the best bit is, guys, that your Commissar is still able to do his regular commissariat duties whilst bringing all of this extra tactical flexibility to the tabletop. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Out of these 3 tactics, which one is your favorite and which one do you think you're most likely to use in your army? If you've enjoyed today's video, make sure you smash that like button and also subscribe to never miss an episode. If you found today's video particularly helpful, then please consider becoming a channel member or Patreon supporter. It really is the lifeblood of the channel and also unlocks a load of great perks for you to enjoy. One of the biggest ones being access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, which is an online community with almost 1,000 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord, and we've got areas to discuss tactics, strategy, army lists, painting, hobbying, and we've even got a pretty spicy meme section as well. And I just want to take a moment now to say a special thank you to all of the latest channel members. So thank you to Wildness Warrior, Wave Summers, Fengosk, Grey and Slam, Andreas, Zachary, Ryan King, Azino, Chris Me, Ben, Bones, Eric, Mayo Nation 88, Mr. Super Nintendo Chalmers, and Anemic 13. Thank you guys for doing your part. Thank you for becoming channel members. I also want to do a shout out to the latest Patreon supporters as well. So a huge thank you to Leslie, Max Rowe, Gibraltar, SM, Philip, Theoya, KitKat, Sweet and Sour Ass, JK, Brandon, Brian, and Watchmaster 134-4. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal, heartfelt thank you to all of my top tier Patreon supporters. These are the War Masters, the people who have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a massive thank you to Alan Blunt III, Bonbon Vert, Mark Panconi, Ross Miller, Swordfish Trombone, Watchmaster 134-4, Alex Dengal, John Stubbs, Nick Walsh, Diesel Fox, Tom Sutton, and August Varney. Thank you guys. Your ongoing and generous support makes a huge impact, and it really is a big part of what allows me to do this full time and to put extra care and attention into every single video. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Thank you for watching, and of course, as always, I'll see you guys next time.